Hi, it's Sasha and welcome back to Casually Comics. And this Friday I thought we'd do something a little bit different. I know it's only been a month, so how different could it really be? But I thought it would be fun to get to know each other a little bit better. When you've been into a hobby for a very long time, sometimes it can take a bit to remember what life was like before that hobby and how one exactly got into it. So I thought it would be fun to share how I got into comics and ask you, how did you get into comics if you are? If not, why not? And are you hoping to get into them? I want to hear all of the things. If you're just quietly meandering in the comic fandom doing your own thing, hit that like button. Some of you are coming over from my other channel, so we've chit-chatted before, so you know that I love huge long comments. I love reading them and I love replying to them, and I'm excited. So, comics. Sometimes there are expectations about who's going to be into comics, who should be, all of that jazz, but really they can be for absolutely anybody, and what draws people to them is different. Every story is a little bit special, and so this one is mine. It's story time. I feel like I should have food of some kind. My hands feel empty. Story time. So for me personally, I bought my first comic when I was in university, but that wasn't the first comic that I read, nor is it the one that really got me into it, though the one in university was the start of the great addiction that is my comic collection. They say you're supposed to have a one long box rule, which I don't even have a long box because I collect everything in trade paperback, and also I have way too many. I had to put some in storage recently, which meant that my shelf looked more empty, so I bought more. I have a problem. This here is one of the most recent additions to the collection. They started collecting the Marvel What Ifs into nice, easy packaging. This is the classic ones. Again, like I said, a problem. My first real exposure to comic books was at about the age of 10 or 11. And that's just because I can't remember exactly how old I was, but it all started with bootleg VHS nights with my dad. This was back in the day when to bootleg something took a lot of effort, but we had lots of VHS tapes that were bootleg that my dad would leave to run and just videotape TV shows during the day, and my mom worked nights, so it was a special treat that we would get to stay up together and watch something. Sometimes it was movies that we rented, and sometimes it was these bootleg discs. The bootleg discs introduced me to many worlds, such as Star Trek TNG. My love of Star Trek actually started with one of these bootleg VHS tapes that I have memorized down to the commercials that were on it. Next up was X-Men, the 90s animated series. We also had that. So I was aware of superheroes and the fact that they existed, but I didn't really know that comic books existed. And then one night, my dad and I were watching Species, which I was probably far too young for, but my dad had no gauge about what was appropriate for children to watch. And it was very much the process of, oh, here's an inappropriate scene, cover your eyes. Actually, no, it was cover your ears and turn around. Yeah, that was the policy. 11-year-old me thought Species was one of the coolest things that she'd ever seen. Species is a 1995 film that prominently features a seductive alien that matures to look like a sexy woman but is actually this alien monster designed by Geiger. And if you've seen Geiger's designs like the alien and all of that jazz, you know how intricate those can be. I find his designs to be quite fascinating, even though he is very, very obsessed with female genitalia. Just take a look at some of his art one day, it's everywhere. So about a week after watching Species, which we then watched more than once because I was so into it, I stumbled upon my dad's comic collection, which wasn't very big. We didn't have a lot of money to frivol away on comic books, so it consisted of only 2 different comics, and they were The Incredible Hulk and Witchblade. And when my dad stumbled upon me looking at these, he was like, do you want to read one? I was like, yes. No, hold on, let me get a kid voice on. I was like, yes. There we go, that sounds right. So he held them both up to me. The Incredible Hulk or Witchblade. And I instantly Witchblade, even though Witchblade, based on the art and stuff, probably may be something that not every parent would have given to their kid, but I'm so glad that he let me have it, even though he did try and put the hard sell on for the Hulk, not because he thought it would be more appropriate, but just because he liked the Hulk better. But I was sold on Witchblade because the design looked like Species to me. I was just like, oh, that's so cool. And then when I learned that it was a piece of alien tech that attached to her body and gave her this really cool costume, I thought it was cool then. I still think it's cool now. I know some people critique it for being barely there. I still think it is absolutely awesome. Funny thing about Witchblade being my first comic is that I don't really remember it. I know I read it multiple times until it fell apart, but I also know that it didn't stick with me. But what stuck with me was the love of comic books and the form of it, and the idea that one day I wanted to have a collection of my own of comics and characters that I was really interested in. So years later, when I had my own money, I was finally able to purchase my first comic, and I went in to the big box bookstore, stood at the overwhelming shelf just full of titles at the time. Now these days the shelves have very much dwindled, but at the time they were huge, like 3 aisles of just different comics. I stood there, I was like, okay, this is overwhelming, so who am I gonna pick? I walked around and around, then I decided Batman seems safe. I've watched a lot of Batman, I know a decent amount of stuff, it shouldn't be too hard. So what next? I picked one with nice art, because art can really impact how you view a story when it comes to comic books, because you're gonna have to be looking at it the entire time. There are comic books where the story's been great, but the art hasn't been, at least in my opinion, and I haven't been able to read it. So the one that I picked up was Batman Hush. I flipped through it and I was like, the art looks really nice. I recognize all the characters. They all seem to be in it. That's exciting. And what really sold me was the panel of Poison Ivy controlling Superman. And I was like, ooh, intriguing. Color me intrigued. I've just watched a lot of Smallville. So much of my comic book experience was influenced by things that I watched. I know that for some fans that's a taboo. It's not a pure way to get in, but honestly, however one enters or finds their way to it, it's absolutely fine. And these different mediums can really enhance or play with each other, or they can detract from each other. It just varies. It's a case-by-case basis type thing. So Batman Hush, the first comic that launched the collection, and then from there I went a little wild. And now I collect tomes, and half of them are in storage, including Hush, but I might go get it, especially with that digital DVD release that I need to watch. I might need to just go get it so I can watch it holding it like a little kid. So this was just a quick chit-chatty story time, because I want to now know, like I said at the beginning, how did you get into comics? What's your story? What's the story, Morning Glory? Tell me, I'm so intrigued. Also, if you feel like it, drop your favorite character down below. Also, feel free to ask me any questions you have and I'll answer them, maybe in the comments, maybe in a video. We're gonna keep it loose, because this is Casually Comics. I love comics for all of their flaws and foibles and their great triumphs. It's just an amazing medium to me. And I'm so excited to talk about all of the different things with you. Old comics, news, history, the whole deal. I'm really excited to be on this journey with all of you, and thank you so much for subscribing and watching. And of course, please, as we're wrapping up, do all of the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell to get notifications so that you never miss a vid. I'm Sasha, and I will see you again soon here on Casually Comics. Bye-bye.